What up, what up, what up, what up, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Just Dropping In. We're sliding over towards this interview. We got Donald Trump talking about his day one plans in great detail, I'm told. This just dropped not just a couple of hours ago, so we should hear some possible new information. But it's about like an hour and some change, so we're going to split it in half and do a part one and a part two. So if you're not already subscribed, hit the button and then hit the other button that it turns into, the little bell icon, so you get notified when we come back and drop part two. All right, let's get into it.
President-elect Donald Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. You are the first president since Grover Cleveland to win non-consecutive terms. Republicans now have control of the House and the Senate.
Right.
What do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days in office?
Well, we're going to do something with the border, and very strong, very powerful. That'll be our first signal, and the first signal to America that we're not playing games. We have people coming in by the millions, as you know, and a lot of people shouldn't be here. Most of them shouldn't be here, but we have jails being emptied into our country. We have mental institutions from all over the world being emptied into our country. So we'll be doing that. We're going to be extending within that period, or as soon as we can, the Trump tax cuts, because you know they're coming due and they're very substantial for people, and it would be very, I think it will anger a lot of people, frankly, if we don't get an extension of that. That's what led us to one of the greatest economies ever. And those two things are going to be very vital, very important. We're going to be focusing on crime in the cities, and we'll work with Democrats.
I will say, as the finance guy, that is still debatable. As it's like the economy, we'll talk about it a little bit.
Red governors, most of them are, as you know, if you look at the 25 worst places, they're just about all Democrat-controlled cities and states, and we're going to be working with Democrat governors and Democrat mayors, and I look forward to doing it, but we have to do something about crime, and mostly in our cities, and we're going to have a lot of other things. We'll be working on nominations. We're going to still be working on some nominations. I think they're going very well. We have, for the most part, I think they're going extremely well. It looks like Peter's doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
We are going to delve into your nominations, but since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy. I used to kid him about it. I didn't think we'd be in this position where he may be, hopefully will be Secretary of Defense. But every time I was with him, he was fighting for soldiers, where he said some soldier was unjustly put in prison because they were really doing what they were taught to do, in some cases. So, yeah, I think he's going to do fine.
The fact that there are these allegations against him, misconduct, sexual misconduct, heavy drinking, the fact that he said to some senators reportedly he'll stop drinking if he gets this job, does that worry you?
No, I think that everybody has something that they can stop. Some people can stop eating. I'm lucky I'm not a drinker, but I could stop eating. And we all want to stop doing something. And if he said that,
that's real.
That's a nice thing to say. That's a good thing to say. But he's very respected. I can tell you, I know a lot of the people at Fox, they think he's fantastic. And the people that work with him, really, they love him. So I think you're going to have somebody that's really terrific. And again,
no, I ain't gonna lie. Like that's real, because when you put it like out there, when you vocalize something like that, it holds you to like a different kind of standard. So you kind of gotta like stick to it a little harder than if you just thought to yourself, oh yeah, like I just gotta stop drinking a little less. You know what I'm saying? And I know, cause like I know that from firsthand experience. So like I find that mad extra human to be having in the rhetoric of this right here.
He talked about with me. I said, you know, you're not really a television guy, even though he did very well, as you know. You're really a military guy. He said, I'm all about the military. And I told him, So he's making a lot of money at Fox. They're doing very well. And I said, if for some reason you don't get this thing, you're not going to be able to go back. And all that money you're making, you can kiss it goodbye. He said, this is all about America. He didn't say, well, let me think about it. Let me discuss it. That's a very big, risky thing he's doing. When he goes and he says, I'm going to give up, millions of dollars in order to possibly become the Secretary of Defense. A lot of people would say it's a great position. It's probably almost no greater position, but a lot of people would say, I have to think about it. He said, I don't have to think about it.
All right, we're going to delve into your cabinet picks a little bit later.
Man,
but I want to delve into one of
I don't know if it's many people that would want to think about it, bro. Like, what? The Secretary of Defense? I'd love that position. I ain't gonna lie. You wouldn't have to ask me twice. Like, my woman's just gonna be like, cool beans, you know what I mean? We taking it full force. Granted, if you're not qualified, you probably have to fucking think about it. But anybody you'd ask that's qualified for that position, I think would probably take it without too much thought to it. But I mean, like, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if you're qualified for that position. At least you're on track to be qualified for that position. Like, would you have to think about it hard? Let me know.
Your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can
it.
you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation. In fact, when I handed it over, they didn't have inflation for a year and a half. They went almost 2 years just based on what I had created. And then they created inflation with energy and with spending too much. So I think I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich. We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
Sir,
See this right here, y'all. This is the tip for tat. This is the game. This is how you negotiate on the world stage. You dig what I'm saying? Like, he's telling all of these countries right now, I'm finna make all of this money off y'all if you don't play ball. You dig what I'm saying? It's like y'all about to be paying coming out the what? Come on, riggedy rack A's, need that. Unless we play ball. You dig what I'm saying? We start making things even because our trade deficit is bombed, y'all. Okay, this is why Trump is so heavy on tariffs. Is because our trade deficit is disgusting. It's horrible. But you know whose trade deficit is not? China's. What? Look, it's not a deficit. It's a surplus. You know what I mean? They books look glorious. If it was company versus company, USA versus China, we're getting our face kicked in right now. You dig what I'm saying? All right? New CEO he's already there. Like it or love it, or like it or hate it, deal with it. It's time that you feel me get to shaking things up. You know what I'm saying?
Previous tariffs during your first administration.
Like, he doesn't intend to actually make all this money he's talking about. He just intends to get them to play ball.
Cost Americans some $80 billion, and now you have major companies from Walmart, Black & Decker, AutoZone saying that any tariffs are going to force them to drive up prices for their consumers. How do you make sure that these CEOs, that these companies don't, in fact, pass on the cost of tariffs to their consumers?
They cost Americans nothing. They made a great economy for us. They also solve another problem. If we were going to have problems having to do with wars and having to do with other things, tariffs, I have stopped war.
I'm not gonna call him a liar. It's probably gonna cost consumers something, but as the businessman he is, it's like it could really be shaded out by cutting in these companies and CEOs in on some of the revenue that come in from the tariffs through government contracts and hoodads, which can be negotiated. You feel what I'm saying? It's like all these companies don't have to shade it on us if they get paid not to, which is like we're all getting paid. I mean, that's a pretty simple solution. I'm a business guy, and it's a pretty simple solution that what I'm saying I can come up with off the top of the dome. You dig what I'm saying? Like easy. You dig what I'm saying? Like it's not that hard to mitigate that. So I'm not gonna call him a liar and say it's automatically not gonna work. But like you know what I mean? I definitely think it's definitely we gonna feel it a little bit as consumers, but that's the cost of doing business. Sorry, all y'all been taking all them credit card loans, getting credit card debt. Y'all ain't been helping the situation either. So we all gonna have to just eat it together, man.
Wars with tariffs by saying, you guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And they have many purposes, tariffs, if properly used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used. But it didn't cost this country anything. It made this country money, and we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part. And we did it very successfully. And when I handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID coming in. It was actually higher. Tariffs are properly used, are a very powerful tool, not only economically, but also for getting other things outside of economics.
Well, again, prices did go up on some goods in your first administration, washing machines, tires. Will you punish CEOs?
Let me just explain to you. No. You mentioned washing machines. So you look at Whirlpool in Ohio. I got a call from Jim Jordan, one of the greats, congressman from Ohio. And he said, they're going out of business because South Korea and China are dumping washing machines into our country. And I put a 50% tariff on the washing machines coming in from China and South Korea. And Whirlpool and the companies that made washing machines, which are based in Ohio, largely based in Ohio, went through the roof. We saved thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. They were all going out of business because they were dumping washing machines. And when I put the tariffs on, they became successful businesses. No, it didn't. Not only didn't it cost people, it made our country stronger and more powerful, and it kept jobs.
But how do you make sure?
So yeah, it did raise the price of the washing machines for the time, but he's trying to articulate that was a situation where we were trying to save the washing machine company so they wouldn't get ran out of business. So we had to raise the prices so they could bring in some more revenue so we could actually outpace all of the washing machines that were coming out. That's how that's broken down. You dig what I'm saying?
The consumers don't wind up paying more. Will you punish CEOs who try to pass the cost of tariffs on to their customers?
Well, the market's going to take care of it. I mean, actually, the market takes care of it. And if it doesn't, we adjust it somewhat. But in the case of Whirlpool, let's say companies that made washing machines, they were all being put out of business by the dumping from...
Hey, say it again, one of the richest men on the planet. The market will take care of it. And if it doesn't, we'll adjust it. It's like if it don't get more clear and transparent than that. Like, in essence, that's like if a company is on some gouging ish, then they're gonna be looked at in a negative light. And like I can say from just one angle being looked at in a negative light, getting put in all in the news talking about price gouging, da 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 da. Well, that's not good for your stock price. You know what I mean? No negative headlines is good for your stock price. So it's like, they got incremental, yes. You know what I'm saying? Like if it goes up, they gonna take it easy. You dig what I'm saying? But like I said, it happens and we gonna eat this together. You dig what I'm saying? If that happens.
In particular, South Korea and China. And when I put the tariffs on, very substantial tariffs, although peanuts compared to what people do to us, what countries do to us, it became a very, very powerful, successful company. Now, let's say I didn't do the tariffs. It would have gone out of business. You would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and you don't include that in your equation. No, they make a lot of money. I'll go a step further. Tariffs are going to make our country rich. Tariffs are going to help us pay off $35 trillion in debt. Tariffs are going to make our country safe because China, as an example, doesn't want to play games with us if we're going to do tariffs on them. They don't want to play games. And we have a lot of games being played on us right now.
Well, I think, and that takes me to my next question.
Yeah.
Are you actually going to impose these tariffs, or are they a negotiating tactic?
Well, I'll give you an example with
Yes and
Canada,
yes.
and in particular Mexico. We have millions of people pouring
It's
into
like,
our country. You agree
That's
with
a stupid question. You don't negotiate with anything you're not willing to do. You dig what I'm saying? It's just like if you don't play ball, we gotta do that. You dig what I'm saying? Like I don't like questions like that. Is it a negotiating tactic, or are you actually really gonna do it? It's like I wouldn't. Why would I say it if I'm not gonna do it? If I'm not willing to go there, you dig what I'm saying? It's like on at this level, listen. He's talking about tariffs will make our country rich. He's not specifically saying that the money from the tariffs is going to make our country rich. It's this whole conversation. It's either they're going to pay us a whole bunch of extra money, or they're going to level the playing field out, and our deficit's not going to be so terrible. You dig what I'm saying? One way or the other, our country's going to be on the up from this conversation. Period.
that. I spoke with both. I spoke with Justin Trudeau. In fact, he flew to Mar-a-Lago within about 15 seconds after the call ended. Yeah. He was at Mar-a-Lago. We were having dinner talking.
Oh, and on the back end of it, what's the worst possible thing that could happen is American companies are going to start making more money because everybody's just going to be buying everything American made. That's the worst end of the stick, by the way.
About it. I said, you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border too a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. And drugs are pouring in. Almost as importantly, drugs are pouring in. Maybe more importantly, drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before. 10 times what we had. They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%. That's a very substantial tariff. And in both cases, but in the case where it was really visible, within 10 minutes after that phone call, we noticed that the people coming across the border, the southern border, having to do with Mexico, they were at a trickle, just a trickle. It was, in fact, I call the border. See, unlike my opponent, I do call the border a lot. And I said, how's the border looking today? They said, there's nobody here. They couldn't believe it. The military stopped these vast groups of people. You know, we call them caravans, but they had caravans of people, and they largely stopped them. Now, they're going to have to continue that, but if they don't continue, and the other thing I told them is no more drugs. And I told that to China, too. I had to deal with President Xi. Had the election been different, I'm going to be very nice because we don't have to get into an argument over 2020. But had the election been different, the result been different, we would have had China giving their maximum penalty, which is the penalty of death, to people that sent fentanyl into this country. But Biden didn't, unfortunately, finish that discussion up. I had an agreement with President Xi, who I got along with very well. We've had communication as recently as this week. And I had communication with him where they were going to give the death penalty to anybody sending drugs into the United States.
This week you had that conversation.
Not that conversation, but I had other conversations. Okay. But in the past, I've had that conversation.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the
buddy,
economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. And I actually have a map. 19 of these states
talk
actually
about it.
voted for you, sir. Mm-hmm. And you can see
Right.
it
Yeah.
right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal
It's a very low
minimum wage?
number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though.
Yeah.
In California, they raised it up to a very high number. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level, do you
I don't
think?
know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And people, the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider it? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might be, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Before we move on to immigration, which I do want to talk about.
It's America, dog. It ain't that low anywhere, nigga. I tell you what, I'm in one of them red states, boy. Listen. That answer isn't likable, I'll say, at least in my general opinion, but it's fair enough because as long as the issue gets continuously raised in his face, it can be addressed. And like what he's saying is that something across the board won't work, which is true. I mean, it's kind of true, but relatively across the board is what we need. And, you know what I mean, he just doesn't have the information or insight and hasn't been focused on that, so he's not going to give a cohesive answer on it. And that's just, you can see that, you know what I mean?
The chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said he will not leave his post even if you ask him to. Will you try to replace him?
Man, Jerome Powell needs to be gone. I hate that man. Jesus Christ. He's why. The economy, don't blame the economy on any president. It's Jerome Powell.
Jerome Powell?
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. But I think if I told him to, he would. But if I asked him to, he probably wouldn't. But if I told him to, he would.
A word?
You don't have plans to do that right now?
No, I don't.
Okay.
You're not gonna
Let's
remove
talk about
Jerome
mass
Powell?
deportation, one of your big agenda items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your...
That's because he doesn't have anybody smart enough to replace him, though. I mean, he could probably find somebody, but he hasn't tried to. So that's the problem. If he had somebody... I don't know. Elon, if you hear this, bro, you know the recommendations we need. We got to get Jerome Powell out of there. Sorry, Jerome. You're garbage, people.
Plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country. They can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're
wonder where
walking
that
down
number
the
comes
streets.
from.
They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No,
That
it's within the 3-year
13,000
period. It's
figure.
during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol.
Fact check.
It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person.
I mean, almost a million people.
You don't want those
13,000
people in this country.
I feel
But
like
you're
that. I feel like that's a fair. I feel like that might be a
something,
fair
sir, that's significant.
assessment.
I just want to make sure I'm
Almost
clear,
a million
which is
people
that you're
get
saying,
in.
yes,
I
you're
feel like
going to focus
13,000
on the
might
people
be,
with criminal
you know,
histories,
kinda hard,
but
kinda
everyone who's here
tough.
illegally has to go.
I'm
is what
saying
you're
this.
saying.
We have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to get people that were taken out of mental institutions and put them back into their mental institution, no matter what country it is. Do you know that Venezuela, their prisons are at the lowest point in terms of emptiness that they've ever been? They're taking their people out of those prisons by the thousands, and they're drunk. And just to get back, because I know exactly what you're getting at. Number one, we're doing criminals, and we're going to do them really rapidly. We're getting the worst gang probably with MS-13, and the Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people. And you see what they've done in Colorado and other places. They're taking over, literally taking over apartment complexes and doing it with impunity. They don't care. They couldn't, they just are, they're in the real estate business.
You know, the local police say that is not the case in Colorado.
Oh, it's
but
totally the case. I mean, I have it
you
on
don't
tape.
believe the local police.
I play it. I used to play it at my rallies.
You don't
every
believe the
single
local
night.
police?
No, they're breaking into doors. They're taking over the building.
But sir, you
And by the
raised
way, the
point.
police are afraid to do anything.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it
they
yourself.
are,
You would
but
need
everything's
24
complicated.
Yeah, you mean you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's
You have
here
no
illegally?
choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our
Get a
country.
little
What about
Rhetoric-y.
dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the
What does
dreamers.
that mean?
And
What are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans
That
are very
means-
open to the dreamers. The dreamers,
See that sounds like he wants to legalize them, right? Does that not? That I feel like that sounds like, because if you want to work with the Democrats literally open the freaking border. So I feel like if he wants to work with the Democrats on something, to do something about the Dreamers, it kind of in my mind hints towards, like, you know, legalizing those folks, because ain't no point, like, you know what I mean? That's kind of crazy, deporting them folks.
we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country. Many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people. And in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
You want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying.
I do. I want to be able to
Yeah,
work something out.
yeah.
And it
For
should have been
sure.
able to be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years. And it never got worked out. You know, Biden could have done it because he controlled, you know, Congress to a
See,
certain
my boy,
extent.
my
right?
boy
He
Trump
could have done
went
something, but they didn't
legalized
do
the
it.
folks.
I
Boy,
never understood
like,
why, because
I'm
they
happy to
always
hear
seem to
that.
want to do it, but
I'm
then
happy
when
to
it comes
hear
down
that.
to it, they don't. I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but
Yeah.
the kids are here legally. Your borders
You're
are
talking
Tom
about
Homan.
separation.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your borders are, Tom Homan said, they can be deported together. Is
Correct.
that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out, like,
Oh,
you know,
man.
this doesn't work,
My
that doesn't
time
work.
is winding down.
I'll tell you what's going to be horrible.
Ooh, you gonna have to tap into the next episode to see what my reaction is to what he's about to say. Yeah, yep. All right, it's been a fun one. I love y'all. Make sure you're kind to somebody today. Don't forget, hit that button. If you're still here watching this, hit that little subscribe button and the bell icon. I love y'all. Make sure you're kind to somebody today. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one.